Says, find this. Oh, I have to do my joke, of course. My favorite student. Anthony says, I thought I was your favorite student. Right. Good old Dan. Find the slope of the line passing through the given points. So remember, that's x1, y1, x2, y2. The slope is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. It's going to be positive 10 over 5. It's going to be 2 over 1. Fine, over 1 as well. 1 mark. The slope is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. It's going to be negative 2 take away 7, negative 9 over 0 minus minus 12. I think that's a plus 12. Which in lowest terms is negative 3 over 4. If you didn't write it in lowest terms, a half mark off. C. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Negative 9 minus 1, negative 8 all over. Negative 4 minus 21, negative 25. Negative divided by negative is a positive, so the slope is... Yeah, that's what I said, negative 10. Okay, Candy. Who was that? Darian? I sort of owed you one from last class anyways, didn't I, from science? So you're saying it's going to be then negative divided by negative, which is positive, and I think 5 goes into the top and bottom. Darian, are you telling me that the slope is 2 over 5? Fine. 1 mark. Number 2, line segment A is parallel to line segment B, perpendicular to C. So if it's parallel, I know that that slope is 2 over 5. If it's parallel, I know that that slope is 3 over 4. Perpendicular means we had 2 words, negative reciprocals. Flip it and change the sign. Negative 5 over 2, 1 mark for that. Positive 4 over 3, 1 mark for that. Or if they give me the perpendicular, the original must have been 9 over 4 positive, 9 over 4 positive. So that question there is out of, count them, 6 marks. The slope of 2 line segments are given. Determine if they are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Well, let's see. In lowest terms, divide by 4, divide by 4. This is 2 over 5. So you know what? Those 2 slopes are the same. What does that mean? There's my abbreviation for parallel. Or you could write the word parallel. Can I abbreviate it with the letter P, Mr. Dewick? No, because perpendicular begins with a P. What do you think I am, dumb? Well, I just figured you'd figured out what it was. Kind of like on a true-false test when you kind of do that and kind of hope for that. Yeah, whatever. Those tricks are old. So A parallel. B. Ooh. Are those perpendicular? Why not? I see reciprocal. Oh, no negative. So you know what? This is nothing. Neither. C. You know what? This needs to be reduced. This is really 3 over what? Ah! Those are perpendicular. And that was the symbol for perpendicular, an upside down capital T. Or you could write perpendicular, but you know I'm going to use an abbreviation if I can. So 1 mark for each of those. If the line segment joining 2, 3 and 8, k has a slope of negative 2/3, then what the heck is k? Well, I don't know what to do. Why don't I try plugging this into the slope formula? I'll get y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 equals, and I know the slope. It's that. Oh, I can tidy this up a little bit. Do I have 1 fraction equals 1 fraction? then I can cross multiply. By the way, when you cross multiply, what you're really doing is multiplying both sides by a common denominator, which in this case would be 6. But I can cross multiply. I'll get negative 12 equals 3 times k minus 3. I'll get negative 12 equals 3k minus 9 plus the 9 over. I'll get negative 3 equals 3k. Divide by negative 3. I didn't leave you much room, but I think you get k. A, yes. Negative 1, yes, yes, yes. 1 mark. Graph the following line segment giving the slope and a point that it passes through. So the first one goes through 0, 0. It has a slope of up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. That's line A. 1 mark for that. Goes through 2 over, 1, 2, 3, 4 up. And then it's down 3 over 2. Down 3 over, no, you know what? 1 mark for that. So what's this quiz out of? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6 is 12. 15 is correct. This quiz would be out of 15. I should have trusted Kira's math. Can you give yourself a nice clear score out of? Count them 15. So last day I threw a bunch of stuff at you. It is not all officially due today. It's officially, as far as I'm concerned, due Friday, but I am going to be doing a lesson today. We are winding up the unit. Today and Friday are your last 2 lessons of new stuff, and then we're just going to spend a day saying, what are the different ways that we can muck around with this? So were there any on the sheet called finding slope A or finding slope B? First of all, what is used to repair big brass band instruments? I know the word tuba was in the punchline, I'm pretty sure. A tuba glue. Ah, there you go, a tuba glue. What did the scouts say after fixing the little old lady's horn? I'm going to guess beep repaired?
Yes.
That one I figured out. Instead of beep repaired, because the horn makes a beep. Brody's back here. That's so funny. It's like, oh man, you should pay money for that. Were there any of these that you were going, holy smokes, I cannot get these right, or I can't figure this out? Yeah. Finding slope B. So you ready? Let's do one together. Let's do the letter I together on the second graph. It said graph those 2 points, negative 4, negative 3 right there, and negative 1, positive 3 right there. Connect them, yoink, and find the slope, rise over run. That's all. Or you could have gone y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You can either use the formula or you can use the graph. They're interchangeable. I usually use the formula because I don't have graph paper in front of me, but if I have graph paper in front of me, it's much easier to go rise over run. I'll make less dumb mistakes. I think the slope of this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, up 6 over 3. So 2 over 1, I think. Is that okay, Darren? Okay. Be honest with me, just so that I know. Who has not finished graphing C? I'm not going to write names down. Enough of you that was the who should you see at the bank if you need to borrow money? The Lone Ranger, I think, is the dumb punchline there. And the back page was, why did Miss Muffet need a road map? I'm going to guess she'd lost her way, spelt W-H-E-Y, like Little Miss Muffet, the dumb nursery rhyme. Is that right? Or she couldn't find her way? What was it? She lost her way? Any of these that you want me to go over on this sheet? Okay, if you didn't do it, you can ask me next class. The last one I'm not going to talk about, but what I gave you out was graphing D and graphing E. And the tricky part here, what I want to talk about today is number 8 on graphing E. This is the one that slope-intercept form fails us for. If I were to get the y by itself and rewrite number 8, I think I would probably go like this. I would plus the 2y over to the other side, Marcus, like that. And then, Anthony, how would I get the y by itself? What's in front of the letter y right there? Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. You get this. I'm not showing all my work, but you'd get y equals x plus 5 over 2. And that's the problem. Sometimes your y-intercept is a decimal. So now what? Well, to be honest, then slope-intercept form doesn't help you that much. Now, if I was graphing this one, here's what I would do. What's 5 over 2 as a decimal?
2.5.
Or as I like to say, 2.5, because that way there's a decimal in my... I would say, okay, the y-intercept is 2.5. What's the slope? What number is in front of the x?
1.
That means up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up. I can eyeball it. And for the purposes of this graph, I'm pretty sure it goes through the letter E. But there's got to be a better way where I can be a bit more exact than that. There's got to be some way where give me any point and the slope, and I should be able to graph it. Not just the y-intercept. Maybe I can be more flexible, and there is, and that's today's lesson. So for the homework from last day, if you have finished it, hand it in. Otherwise, you've got some homework tonight or tomorrow or on the weekend. But let's go on to the next lesson. So turn your brains on, gird up your mind. Lesson 5. This is called slope point form. And as you may guess from the title, instead of needing the slope and the y-intercept, or instead of telling you the slope and the y-intercept, this form tells you the slope and a point, any point. In fact, slope-intercept form is a special form of this more universal case. Investigation number 1. When we know the slope of a line and the coordinates of a point on the line, we can use the idea that the slope is constant on that line, because it's a straight line, to find the equation. Say, what? What I tell my students is the slope formula is sort of the Swiss Army knife of graphing. You can use it all over the place. It's very, very flexible. I'll show you what I mean. This line has a slope of negative 2/3, and it passes through negative 2 comma 5. We use any other point to write an equation for the slope m. Let's call this other point x comma y. Say what, Mr. Dewick? We're going to say this. This is x1, y1. This is x2, y2. And we're going to use the slope equation that says y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 equals the slope. Except we're going to plug in everything that we can. What is the slope according to this question? You're right, say it loudly. So where there's an m, I'm going to put a negative 2 over 3, Amy. I'm going to put a little fraction bar right there, because there's my slope formula. I know x1 and y1. y1 is a 5 with a minus sign in front of it, because it's y2 minus y1. x1 is negative 2 with a minus sign in front of it, because it's x2 minus x1. And here's what I said. Naomi, this other point, I'm just going to call it any old x and y. I'm going to say that y2 is just the letter y, any x, any y. And x2 is just the letter x. It's just the letter x. Okay? You with me so far, Alex? I've said, well, I know the slope, I know one point. I'll let the other point be an algebraic one, x comma y, and I'm going to see if I can rewrite this now. Do I have 1 fraction equals 1 fraction? Then I can cross multiply, except, you know what? I don't want to cross multiply completely. I want to leave the 3 down there. So I'm just going to cross multiply this to this side and leave it in brackets. Okay? By the way, what's a minus minus the same as? We'll come back to that. I'm going to rewrite this but I'm not going to completely cross multiply. I'm going to leave the y minus 5 equals negative 2/3 x minus negative 2. Y minus 5 equals negative 2/3 x minus minus 2. Now, Ty, I wouldn't really write it as x minus minus 2. How would I write that instead? What's a minus minus the same as? Okay. Or in terms of an equation, what point does this graph go through according to the little paragraph of information that I gave you?
-2, 5.
So let's go negative 2 left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. Let's put a dot there. What's the slope?
-2/3.
Down 2 over 3, down 2 over 3. And if I go in the opposite direction, Jordan, back 3 up 2. If I use a straight edge or a ruler and I connect these dots, I can do it a little better than that, Mr. Newick. Dope, I'm a little high again. So I freehand it terribly. Here's what I want you to notice. Take a look at this line. What's the slope?
-2/3.
And what's the point that I knew that it went through?
-2, 5.
Can you see any of that hidden in here? Can you see the slope hidden in there anywhere? Where? Yeah, in front of the bracket with the x in it? Yes. Can you see the 5 up hidden anywhere? Can you see that the point was moved 5? The coordinate, the point that we had was -2, 5. Can you see the 5 anywhere in the equation? Where? After the y. Now there's a negative in front of it, but that's because we used the slope formula to generate it, and the slope formula has a negative in it. But it's +5. Can you see the -2 from the x coordinate hidden anywhere in the equation? Where? Inside the bracket. Now it was a -2 to left, but because the slope formula introduced a negative, we actually end up with the opposite there as well. In fact, here is the generic form. We call an equation of this form here slope point form. Why? Because you can see the slope and you can see a point, but you have to take the opposite numbers for the points because there's a minus sign in front of them already. Say what? Point slope form looks like this. Y minus y1 where y1 is the y-coordinate of the point that you know. Why is there a minus sign in front of it? Because that came from the slope formula. We're not saying that the y-coordinate was itself negative. Equals, the slope is sitting right there in front of the bracket, and inside the brackets you'll have x minus, and then this can be your x-coordinate point. Why minus again, Alex? Because there was a minus that came from the slope formula that we used to generate it. This is slope point form. Why is it called slope point form? Because you can see the slope and you can see a point. And the nice thing about this, Brady, is it doesn't necessarily need to be a y-intercept for this to work. By the way, if it is a y-intercept, I'll show you in a second that this is slope-intercept form in disguise. Turn the page. Did you all just turn the page? Then Alon, just to jog our memory, let's go. Here's our new form. Y minus y1 equals m bracket x minus x1. Number 1 says, the graph of y plus 3 equals 2 bracket x minus 1. It's shown on the grid. Determine the slope of the graph. Okay. Let's go rise over run for the graph. If I go rise over run, I have a point A right there. And I think, how about right there as another point? What's the rise?
4.
Over. What's the slope? 2. Oh, does that match with where we thought the slope went in this new form, this slope point form? Yeah. B, I wrote list the coordinates of point A on the line. What are the coordinates of point A? What, comma, what?
1, -3.
Can you see where the 1, -3 appears in the equation anywhere? See where the 1 is? There's a minus sign in front of it because that came from the slope formula. See where the 3 is? Why is the 3 positive and not negative? Right? It's really this. Right? Is that okay, Amber? So what I'm saying is, if you have an equation and the y isn't by itself, there's a constant term, but you notice that the x has something in brackets and there's a number in front of it, y, that's slope point form, and you know the slope and you know a point. Number 2 says the graph of y minus 1 equals -2/3 bracket x plus 4 is shown on the grid. Find, I wrote, the slope. Well, let's use point B and that point right there. What is the slope, rise over run? Is that surprising when you look at the original equation? No, I saw it coming. What are the coordinates of point B? Can you see that hidden anywhere in the equation? See it, Simi? There's a -4 hidden in there because it's a minus minus, which became a plus. And there's a 1 hidden there. Not a -1 because that minus sign came from the slope formula, not from the point. Now, this is actually a little bit confusing because there's lots of room to get stuff mixed up. First thing kids do is they want this one to be the x and this one to be the y because they're used to just x coming before y. But look, it's next to the y, it belongs to the y. It's next to the x, it belongs to the x. This is the x coordinate. Second thing is you got to realize you're flipping the sign because point-slope form, it says compare the numbers to a and b with numbers in the equation. Same but opposite signs. Point-slope form looks like that. Y minus y1 equals m bracket x minus x1, where m is the slope and x1 comma y1 is any point on the line, not just the y-intercept, any point on the line. So now, if I want to get the equation from a graph and the y-intercept is a decimal, it's okay. Find the slope and find any other point on the line. And you're good to go. To determine the equation of a line in higher level math classes, especially calculus, the point slope, in math 10 they call it slope point. I always learned it as point slope. The slope point equation is used more frequently than slope intercept form. Slope intercept form is nice in lower level math. Upper level math, your y-intercept is almost never a decimal. So you just want to find any point and any slope. Note, I wrote, turn the page. The slope point equation is used when we have the slope of a line and any other point. When using this method to determine the equation of a line, they will often ask you to give the final answer in what we call general form, where you make everything equal to 0 and it looks like something x plus something y plus something equals 0, or in slope-intercept form, where you get the y by itself. Say what? Investigation 2. A says, write an equation for this line. Now, if I was going to do this in slope-intercept form, what's the problem? What's my y-intercept on this graph? A half or maybe 3/4, or it could even be 0.49. Might be really close to it. I don't know. So slope-intercept form won't help me. I can find the slope though. What's the slope? How about here and here? What's the rise? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the run? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Does that reduce? No. So if I wanted to write this as an equation, here's my template. Y minus y1 equals m bracket x minus x1. We can fill this in. What's the slope?
5/8.
All we need is one point, and it doesn't matter which point we use. We can use the left-hand point or we can use the right-hand point. Which point do you want to use? The one on the left or the one on the right? Right? So we're going to use this point here. It's going to be minus, it's going to be minus. What's the y-coordinate of that point there? What's the x-coordinate of that point there? By the way, you would get the same equation. It would look different at first, but trust me, you would get the same equation if you used the left-hand point. Y minus 5/8 x minus. That left-hand point, what's its y-coordinate?
-2.
the right-hand point, what's its y coordinate?
Negative.
Sorry, x coordinate. -4? You would get y plus 2 equals 5 over 8 bracket x plus 4. Those two equations are identical. Say what? They are identical. Really, Mr.? Yeah, they are. They don't look the same. Trust me, they're going to be in a second. I would take either of those answers. What does part B say, Greg? Okay. Saying get the y by itself. Get the y by itself. Well, to do that, we have to use our equation-solving algorithm. Remember the word Feldstad? First thing we're going to clear is fractions. So let's draw a line down the middle because we're going to do it for both of these. I have this. Y minus 3 equals 5 over 8 bracket x minus 4. What's the fraction that you see here? What's the denominator that you see here? I'm going to multiply everything by a common denominator. Ben, what's my common denominator?
8.
Times by 8, times by 8, times by 8. I don't need to put the 8 inside the brackets because I put it in front. Now here, those 8s will cancel because you have 8 times 5 divided by 8. You end up with 8y minus 24 equals 5 bracket x minus 4. Yes? Now what? Now what? Feldstad, we've done f fractions. What did the e stand for? Do you remember? Expand the brackets. So we're going to go chunk, chunk. When we do that, we're going to get 8y minus 24 equals 5x minus 20. Now what? Okay, so I have no like terms on the left side or on the right side. I just have a single x on the left, single x on the right, single constant on the left, single constant on the right. Now we're going to do our adding and subtracting. Let's get all the, well, we're trying to get the y by itself, so I guess I need to plus 24, yes? And I'll get 8y equals 5x plus 4. Now what?
Divide b8 from the y. Divide on both sides.
And I'm going to get this. Y equals 5 over 8x plus, I could write 4 over 8, but what's 4 over 8 really in lowest terms?
1 over 2.
That's the slope-intercept for. By the way, can you see the y-intercept is a fraction, which is why that method didn't work for us. But it was exactly a half, as it turned out, not 0.49, not 3/4. Alex, just for giggles, what if I did the same thing with this second version of the line? I would still clear fractions. So I would still say times by 8, times by 8, times by 8. Those 8s would still cancel, Marcus. I would get 8y plus 16 equals 5 bracket x plus 4. Now what? Oh, expand. I would get 8y plus 16 equals 5x plus 20. Now what?
Minus 16 over.
Minus 16 from both sides. and I get 8y equals 5x plus 4. And, oh, isn't it exactly what I had up there? That suddenly you'll end up in the same, somewhere along the way, Simi, you'll suddenly find, oh, I'm in the same place as I would have been if I'd used the other point. So here's the nice thing. Doesn't matter which point you pick. I usually pick the one that's easiest to work with. Is that okay? This is point slope form. I know it's a little confusing. If you're finding this tricky, you're normal. Next page. Did you all just turn the page? Well, that's convenient. At the top of the page, let's write down our new form. Y minus y1 equals m bracket x minus x1. Where slope point form really shines is if they want the equation, and all you know is the slope and 1 point, because then it's straight plug and chug. Let me give you an example. It says, state the equation in slope point form of the line through the given point with the given slope. Okay. It's going to look like this. Done. You see it? Y minus y1, 5, equals m, slope, 3, bracket, x minus x1, 6. Did they say they wanted me to get rid of brackets or rewrite this at all, or did they say leave it in slope point form in the instructions? So leave it. But I could get rid of brackets. I could rewrite this any way I wanted to. B. Y minus what?
1.
Equals what? Negative 4 bracket x minus what? 1. Ta-da! C. Y minus what? Careful. You're right and wrong at the same time. Y minus, not the 9, but the negative 8, right? Because y2 equals a half bracket x minus negative 9. And I heard, I think, Marcus or Alex murmur, yeah, I won't leave it like that because I have minuses. I wouldn't write it this way, and if it was multiple choice, this wouldn't be your answer to pick from. This would be what? Y plus 8 equals a half bracket x plus 9, and I'd have to clue in that the point that this went through was actually negative 9 comma negative 8. Example 2 says, in each case, the slope of a line and a point are given. Find the equation in slope-intercept form. Okay. I'm going to write it in point-slope form first, then I'll get rid of brackets, fractions, and get the y by itself. Y minus what? 2 equals what? 5 bracket x plus 5 minus minus, which is a plus. There is slope point form, but not slope intercept form. Multiply, multiply. No fractions to clear. Yes? I get y minus 2 equals 5x plus 25. Now what? The equation in slope-intercept form is y equals 5x plus 27. What's the slope? 5. What's the y-intercept? Positive 27, or 0 comma 27. B. Y minus 4 negative 7 bracket x felt sad. Any fractions to clear? Nope. E, expand. Get rid of brackets. Boom, boom. I'll get y minus 4 equals negative 7x minus 21. Get the y by itself? Okay. Y equals negative 7x minus 17. Is that okay? Yeah? Point slope form. I keep calling it point slope form because that's how I learned it. Slope point form is what they want to call it now. Very useful. Let's turn the page. A couple more, we're done. Oh, more than a couple more, we're done. Sorry. A line, it says, passes through those 2 points. Find the equation in slope-intercept form. Well, I think the first thing I'll do is I'll find the slope. How do I find the slope between 2 points? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. y2, negative 3 minus y1, 0, all over x2, negative 2 minus x1, negative 6. I get a slope of negative 3 over negative 2 minus minus 6 is negative 2 plus 6 is positive 4. There's step 1. Step 2. Step 2. Rewrite this in slope point form. Doesn't matter which point you use as your x comma y, because I told you, or I showed you, that you get the same answer partway through. You'll end up in the same place and you'll get the same answer tie. So my advice to you is if they're giving you 2 points to pick from, pick one that looks easier. Which of those 2 points looks easier to do math with? Oh, it's got a 0 and I'm pretty good with my 0. I'll use the one with a 0 in it. So it's going to look like this. Y minus y1, 0, equals the slope, negative 3/4, bracket, x minus x1, negative 6. By the way, what is y minus 0?
Y.
Because I asked you to. What is y minus... Oh, shut up. Yes, you're doing. So we really have this. Y equals negative 3/4, bracket, x plus 6. Do we have the y by itself? Yeah. Is this in slope-intercept form properly, though? What's yucky about it, Anthony? Brackets. Okay. If we're going to do that, you know what we need to do? Pardon me? Negative 0. Well, I like my slope as a fraction.
Felt sad, get rid of fraction.
We can do that. I'm going to give you a bit of a shortcut, though. Is everything on the right-hand side in brackets besides just the fraction? Say yes.
Yes.
And you can do this. Do that. Extend your little fraction bar. The x plus 6 is on the top. The 4 is on the bottom. Ty, why is that handy? Because now I can go like this. And I'll get negative 3x minus 18 all over 4. Why is that so important, Mr. Dewick? Because that's really the same as this. negative 3x over 4 minus 18 over 4. Is that in slope-intercept form? Yeah, except I don't like that 18 over 4. How would I choose to write that instead?
9 over 2.
Final answer. Y equals negative 3 over 4x, take away 9 over 2. That's the slope-intercept form version of that equation. I'll be honest, I think there's a slightly better way to do this that gets us to this a little quicker, but I'll be showing you that another day. For now, slope point form, Marcus gets you there. Take a look at A and B and C and D.
Evelyn Kovacs, you have a
Take a look
message
at all of
message.
these. I think all of these are in slope point form. Let's see. It says state the slope and write the coordinates of the point on the line. Let's do this first one. What's the slope?
1 over 2.
And let's call the point P for point. What are the coordinates of the point that it goes through?
Negative 4 or
Now this is where it gets tricky.
4 negative 4.
Positive 4, negative 11. Opposite, opposite. Yoink. B. What's the slope? What's the point that this line goes through? Careful.
Positive 7, negative, positive 9.
Yeah. And Jordan, the tricky part is keeping straight the positives and negatives. Oh, and realizing the x's from the x part and the y's from the y part, because if everybody wants to do this one first because it shows up first. No, that's your y coordinate. Comes second. Like I said, I mean, it's a great shortcut. It is actually a little confusing. I'm not going to deny that. But if you wrap your brain around it, it's good. Hey, C! What's the slope?
Negative 3.
Negative 3 over 1. Am I going to write the over 1? No. What's the point?
6, comma 0.
6, 0. Nice. Because there's nothing being added to the y. What's nothing as a number? 0. Right? What's the slope? What's the point?
Negative 3, comma 9.
I've asked what's the point many a time. Yeah, Greg, we're talking about something different there. I made fun of you. Just relax. Go back to working. Nearly done. Last thing we want to practice is how we can graph this. So it says, describe the graph and graph it. So, what's the slope?
1 over 3.
What's the point?
Negative 4, positive 2.
So let's duck down to this graph at the bottom of the page. Let's put a dot at negative 4, comma 2. Negative 4, comma 2. What did you tell me the slope was?
1 over 3.
Is that what it was? Means count how?
Up 1.
Up 1, over 3, up 1, over 3, up 1, over 3. And you can see this is the only way that we could graph this one accurately, because it definitely has a y-intercept that is a decimal or a fraction. This is slope point form. I'm going to have to get used to calling it different from what I always called it, point slope form. Slope point form. Is that okay? We need to practice. It's a little weird, I know. What's your homework? Give me a second. So what's your homework? If you take a look here, first thing I gave you is quiz number 2. Okay. Question 1, graph those lines there. Some are in slope-intercept form. Some you might need to rewrite. Question number 2, tell me the slope and the y-intercept of those equations there. Okay. Turn the page over. Question number 3, which of those 6 equations, A, B, C, D, E, and F, produce straight lines? Just write the letters that you think are straight lines and not curves in that space. Number 5, find the x-intercept and the y-intercept of that equation there. I think the y-intercept is pretty easy to find. The x-intercept will take a bit of work, and I think it's a decimal. And then, sorry, that was number 4. Number 5, write the equations of those 4 lines, just so that you know this line here going up slanty, that's line A. This one going down slanty is line B. Line C is this horizontal line, and line D is this vertical line. That's really your official. You better have that done when I see you next on Friday homework, and you'll have 20 minutes to work on that. Then I gave you, which one did I give you? Graphing G. So here, they're giving you the slope and a point. You'll have to do this on a separate piece of paper. Plug it into the slope point form equation, and then rewrite it in slope-intercept form, getting the y by itself like we did in our homework. Whichever one of those ends up being correct, you'll put that letter in the box number 1 at the bottom of the page, and you can find out, why did gyro go into a bakery? I'm dying to know. And then the back of it, is it graphing H on the back? A little tougher now. Here, I'm giving you 2 points. Find the slope using y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Once you have done that, then rewrite it in point slope form, slope point form, and then get the y by itself. It's a bit of work. Sorry, no way to make it a shortcut. Well, there is, but I'll show it to you later. Main homework, get the quiz done.